The U.S. and Turkey announced a temporary ceasefire in northeast Syria to allow Kurdish forces to withdraw. As Donald Trump hails an amazing outcome, critics say he's merely trying to save face in a crisis of his own making. The EU greenlights Boris Johnson's Brexit deal. The British Prime Minister must now get it through Parliament by Saturday if the UK is to leave by October 31st. Johnson says he's confident, but the numbers spell trouble. And Venezuela wins a seat on the UN Human Rights Council, a controversial vote that Caracas celebrates as a victory, while Venezuela's opposition leader calls it, quote, a seat of blood. Welcome back to the France 24 newsroom here in Paris. Good to have you with us. We begin with the announcement that Turkey will suspend their offensive in northern Syria for a period of 5 days, allowing Kurdish fighters to withdraw from a buffer zone along the border. Kurdish forces have said that they accept the ceasefire but will not tolerate an ongoing Turkish presence in the region. Donald Trump, meanwhile, has hailed it as a, quote, an amazing outcome, but critics say it's an attempt by the U.S. president to save face a week after he ordered the withdrawal of U.S. troops and paved the way for Turkey's deadly offensive against Syrian Kurds. Clément Bonneau explains.
It's a deal Donald Trump cannot stop raving about. Further proof, if needed, of his superior deal-making skills.
It's a great day for the United States. It's a great day for Turkey. Great day for the Kurds. It's really a great day for civilization.
Trump may be convinced the agreement is an amazing outcome, but on closer inspection, it's a significant victory for Ankara, not Washington. The deal essentially gives the Turks what they had sought to achieve with the military operation in the first place. That is, the removal of Kurdish-led forces from the border. Ankara, meanwhile, is under no obligation to withdraw its troops from the region.
On one side, we have the YPG not especially accepting the deal and saying that they won't accept occupation. And on the other side, the Turks engage themselves to actually little steps. So I'm not saying that as a great deal, actually.
Experts also say the deal is a victory for the Syrian regime and its ally Russia, who have wasted no time in filling the vacuum left by the withdrawal of US troops from northern Syria. President Bashar al-Assad is keen to reassert control over nearly one-third of the country that has been outside his grip since 2012. Russia, meanwhile, emerges as the single most influential power broker in the region.
What the US has achieved with a very big stick is to hold the Turkish offensive in that limited stretch of 100 kilometers wide in the middle, and this is halted for 120 hours. And that's the gimmick. Why 120 hours? Because in 120 hours exactly, President Erdogan will meet President Putin in Sochi.
Trump's decisions could also have political repercussions at home, some saying they could cost the US president re-election in 2020.
One of the West's main concerns about the Turkish offensive has been the fate of some 10,000 Islamic State fighters being held in Kurdish-run prisons. Searching for a solution, France's foreign minister met with officials in Baghdad this Thursday. He's looking into transferring foreign jihadists out of northern Syria to face trial in Iraq. Alexander Aukat has the story.
Turkey's offensive has created renewed urgency to put on trial jihadists held by Kurds in northern Syria. And in Baghdad, France's top diplomat presented his Iraqi counterpart with a European plan for thousands of them to be transferred for trial there.
This international coalition must meet to face the new risks caused by the Turkish intervention in northeastern Syria. Then there are the foreign fighters coming from 72 different countries that are in the camps and the prisons controlled by the Syrian Democratic Forces.
Legal experts from 7 European countries have been in Baghdad this week to lay the groundwork for Jean-Yves Le Drian's talks, although questions over the fairness of Iraqi justice and its use of the death penalty have slowed progress. But in any case, the Iraqi Foreign Ministry has essentially dismissed the plan, refusing to allow what it called foreign terrorists who carried out attacks outside Iraq onto its soil. It only accepted to try its own nationals.
Iraq adopts all necessary security measures to prevent the infiltration of foreign fighters across borders. Also, Iraq has officially declared that it will receive all Iraqi fighters along with their families and children, and that it will return them to Iraq.
Europeans make up around a fifth of some 10,000 fighters held captive by Kurdish forces, but those nations are avoiding bringing them back for trial, as it could spark a public backlash or fresh attacks on home soil, and there will be difficulties collating evidence. But there are deeper fears that hundreds of former jihadist fighters might escape if they stay put, raising the chance of the Islamic State group rising from the ashes.
Moving now to Brussels, where Boris Johnson was all smiles Thursday as European leaders unanimously endorsed his new version of the Brexit agreement. The Crunch EU summit was just the first hurdle for the British Prime Minister. If he fails to get the deal through the Parliament by the end of Saturday, he'll be legally required to request an extension from the EU, pushing Brexit 3 months past the current October 31st deadline. Today, it was all about celebrating the EU approval, though. Let's take a listen to the European Commission President and the British Prime Minister speaking earlier.
The text on which we've agreed protects the rights of our citizens. It protects peace and stability on the island of Ireland. The agreement provides for a transitional period until the end of 2020, at least.
I do think there is a very good case for voting for this deal on all sides of the House, and we will certainly be taking that vote very seriously. I'm very confident that when MPs of all parties look at this deal, they will see the merit of supporting it, getting Brexit done on October the 31st, and honouring the mandate of the people, honouring the promises that were made repeatedly by parliamentarians to the people to get Brexit done, and giving us all a chance to move on. I think the imperative is very, very strong.
Heading now to the Spanish region of Catalonia, where for a fourth evening in a row, protesters clashed with police in Barcelona. Separatists are angry over the long jail sentences handed out to a group of the movement's leaders earlier this week. This Friday, they hope to bring the region to a halt with a general strike. Meanwhile, the head of Catalonia's regional government, Quim Torra, is calling to hold another independence referendum, a demand that has separatists divided, as Times correspondent Graham Keeley explained to us earlier.
We have a bit of a split in the independence movement about what exactly they should do next, because today Quim Torra, the president of Catalonia, suddenly announced that he wants to hold another unilateral referendum. Now, this took his supposed allies by surprise. There are two main separatist parties here. The more left-wing Catalan Republic Party didn't know anything about this. It's not what they want to do. They advocate not taking on the state or the Spanish authorities so directly as happened 2 years ago. They prefer to reach some kind of a political solution after negotiations, although they want concessions from Madrid to even get round the negotiating table. And these concessions, of course, concern the fate of the 9 people who were jailed earlier this week.
Less than a month ago, the UN Human Rights Council announced plans to probe possible rights violations in Venezuela. This Thursday, Venezuela won a seat on that very same council. In a secret ballot at the UN, 14 new countries joined the group, including Brazil and Costa Rica. Venezuela's place on the list has several major critics, including U.S. officials, expressing their outrage.
I congratulate states which have been elected members of the Council.
Despite the controversy, a round of applause for the 14 new countries elected to the UN Human Rights Council. Among them, Venezuela, which won a seat despite fierce opposition from the United States and international rights groups. Members of Nicolas Maduro's government praised the results, accusing the United States of attempting to sabotage the vote.
The unilateral dictatorship of the United States could not impose anything on us. Yesterday, we received messages from some foreign ministries in Asia and Africa talking about emails that the State Department desperately sent to them, from senior officials at the State Department to the foreign ministers of those countries to extort them, to ask them not to vote for Venezuela today.
The leaders of some 50 countries no longer recognize Nicolas Maduro as Venezuela's legitimate president, accusing him of massive human rights abuses. Opposition leader and self-declared interim president Juan Guaido called for a review of the United Nations over the vote, noting it came the same day an opposition activist was found dead in Caracas, and amid continued threats from Nicolas Maduro against opposition protesters.
This happened certainly 1 or 2 days after the usurper Maduro threatened everyone who protested on national television. He threatened them, saying that all those who prepared to protest should be careful. That was a message from the dictatorship.
The Geneva-based UN Human Rights Council is tasked with promoting rights and investigating countries suspected of abuses, though the council has had several members with problematic records in the past, including China, Saudi Arabia, and Libya.
A top White House official has acknowledged that military aid for Ukraine was held back earlier this year, in part to pressure Kiev to investigate allegations against Democrats and the 2016 presidential election. The issue is central to an impeachment inquiry against President Donald Trump. White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney insists that the choice was appropriate and that it was part of a larger concern about corruption in Ukraine. Take a listen.
I was involved with the process by which the money was held up temporarily, okay? 3 issues for that. The corruption in the country, whether or not other countries were participating in the support of the Ukraine, and whether or not they were cooperating in an ongoing investigation with our Department of Justice. The money held up had absolutely nothing to do with Biden. There's no question, and that was the point I made to you.
Finally, this Friday, the United States is set to place a 25% import tariff on a long list of European products that includes French wine, Spanish olives, and Italian Parmesan. As our correspondent in Italy, Natalia Mendoza, reports, the tariffs have provoked major concern from producers of Italy's famous cheese.
Paolo Gennari's family have been making authentic Italian Parmesan cheese for 3 generations, a traditional product that they export above all to the United States.
It's a product that is handmade. Look, there are no machines. It's the human hand that gives the shape to the Parmesan. It's the skilled labor that explains the cost of the Parmesan.
A few days ago, Paolo began to worry. Italian Parmesan is on the list of products targeted by the increase in customs duties imposed by the United States.
This wheel costs us more than 500 euros to make. And if we have to add extra taxes, that could affect sales. The new customs duties are going to hit the whole of our sector.
Today, Paolo is hoping that the European Union will intervene to limit the damage caused by these new measures.
We're asking our government and Europe to work together to negotiate with the United States to make sure that our sector is not affected.
In the area around the town of Parma, in the north of Italy, over 3,500 businesses are involved in the production of Parmesan. According to early estimations, these new sanctions could cost Italy more than 500 million euros.
The United States is the second biggest importer after France. The import tax has gone up from 2 to 6 euros per kilo, which means the American consumer will pay 45 euros per kilo instead of 40 euros. For us, this is a tragedy.
A tragedy, as this risks compromising sales on the other side of the Atlantic. In 2018, Italy exported 31 million kilos of cheese to the United States for a total value of 272 million euros.
We're going to have to leave it there for now, but do stay with us here on France 24. We'll have more news coming up soon.